Shayla, hey girl, hey, that's why, boo. Look, y'all. I ain't overslept in over 3 years. Look, hold on, let me write my stuff down. Sorry. Top of the day, beautiful people. Top of the day, Betswabu. I do apologize for my extreme, let's not even say tardiness, lateness. Oh my gosh. First of all, I forgot it was daylight savings time. Second of all, my phone was turned all the way down, and I don't know for what reason I did not hear it go off. Yes, thank you, Uncle Nathan. Yes, I'm late. Thank you. Yes, that's what I'm sitting here apologizing for now. I know you're just joking, right? Yeah, look, when I opened my eyes, I did wake up earlier, but when I woke up, it was like 5 a.m. on my clock, on my nightstand, and I forgot it was daylight savings time. Had I would have remembered it was daylight savings time, I would have realized it was 6 o'clock, and I would have went ahead and got up. Shalom, shalom. Yeah, everybody, look. Yeah, look, everybody was texting my phone and sending me inboxes this morning. I woke up like, oh my God, it's daylight savings time. And then I looked, and like right when I posted that message, probably about 10, almost 15 minutes ago now, is when I opened my eyes. But here's what's crazy. My entire house is still asleep. Like somebody should be woke, right? Somebody should have woken up. I guess we all overslept. Because y'all know they be on 10 first thing in the morning because they all be up. Sometimes they get up before I do. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. I'm like, what? I said, was we all this tired this morning? Like, was we all extremely tired? So I'm just like, what? Why? I have not overslept in over 3 years. I know sometimes I be cutting it close, but a lot of times it's because I'm dealing with their shenanigans first thing in the morning, trying to get them quiet. But I'm like, okay, we're here. Let me go. Let me go ahead and put out a message. People done put out an APB on me. You okay? Is everything okay? Yes, I'm fine. I just overslept. We good. Okay. All right, y'all. So there you have it. First time being late in 3 years doing the video. First time oversleeping in over 3 years. Okay. All right. I really do feel some kind of way about it. I really do. So, okay. All right, y'all. So let's go ahead and do the shimmer. I just want to double check that real quick. So let's go ahead. I do apologize. This is normally the time we're getting off. Now we're just getting started. Okay. All right, y'all. Shalom, Mom. Shalom, shalom. Okay. Let's go ahead and do the shimmer. Let me pull it up. Okay. All right, y'all. The shimmer is found in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 3. Hear, therefore, O Israel, and observe to do it, that it may be well with you, and that you may increase mightily, as Yahuwah, the God of our fathers, has promised us in the land that flows with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, Yahuwah, our God, he is one God, and you shall love Yahuwah, your God, with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words which I command you this day shall be in your heart, and you shall teach them diligently unto your children, and you shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up, and you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes, and you shall write them upon the posts of your house and on your gates. And Yahuwah commanded us to do all these statutes, to fear Yahuwah our God for our good always, that he might preserve us alive as it is this day. And it shall be our righteousness if we observe to do all these commandments before Yahuwah our God, as he has promised us. Oh yeah, better late than nothing at all, right? Like I really feel some kind of way that I'm like, okay, Father, like clearly it happened for a reason, even if the only reason that I should have remember to set the clock on my nightstand, right? Okay. Yeah, so I gotta fix that. Like everything said, and then I didn't like normally my phone. It doesn't matter if my phone is up or down. It'll go off anyway, and it'll be just as loud. But I didn't even hear the alarm on my phone go off. Right? I may have heard it. I don't know. Okay. All right, yeah. So today we're starting at Judges chapter 10. Picking it up right here. And then we're going to hop right over to the Legends of the Jews. Okay, so today, Yahuwah giving Tola a shot. A shot at this judge thing, right? Okay. Move this over. All right, y'all. Okay. Judges chapter 10. After Abimelech died, Tola, son of Puah, son of Dodo, was the next person to rescue Israel. He was from the tribe of Issachar, but lived in the town of Shamir in the hill country of Ephraim. He judged Israel for 23 years. When he died, he was buried in Shamir. After Tola died, Jair from Gilead judged Israel for 22 years. His 30 sons rode around on 30 donkeys, and they owned 30 towns in the land of Gilead, which are still called the towns of Jair. When Jair died, he was buried in Camon. Again, the Israelites did evil in Yahuwah's sight. They served the images of Baal and Ashtaroth, and the gods of Aram, Sidon, Moab, Ammon, and Philistia. They abandoned Yahuwah and no longer served him at all. So Yahuwah burned with anger against Israel, and he turned them over to the Philistines and the Ammonites, who began to oppress them that year. For 18 years, they oppressed all the Israelites east of the Jordan River in the land of the Amorites, that is, in Gilead. The Ammonites also crossed to the west side of the Jordan and attacked Judah, Benjamin, and Ephraim. The Israelites were in great distress. Finally, they cried out to Yahuwah for help, saying, "We have sinned against you because we have abandoned you as our God and have served the images of Baal." Yahuwah replied, "Did I not rescue you from the Egyptians, the Amorites, the Ammonites, the Philistines, the Sidonians, the Amalekites, and the Moabites? When they oppressed you, you cried out to me for help, and I rescued you. Yet you have abandoned me and served other gods, so I will not rescue you anymore. Go, cry out to the gods you have chosen. Let them rescue you in your hour of distress." Uncle James Brown Levine, good morning. I'm tardy. I was giving my apologies this morning. No, I'm not tardy. I'm extremely late. Guys, I overslept. I'm sorry. Forgive me. But the Israelites pleaded with Yahuwah and said, "We have sinned. Punish us as you see fit. Only rescue us today from our enemies." Then the Israelites put aside their foreign gods and served Yahuwah, and he was grieved by their misery. At that time, the armies of Ammon had gathered for war and were camped in Gilead, and the people of Israel assembled and camped at Mizpah. The leaders of Gilead said to each other, "Whoever attacks the Ammonites first will become ruler over all the people of Gilead." Judges chapter 11. Now Jephthah of Gilead was a great warrior. He was a son of Gilead, but his mother was a prostitute. Gilead's wife also had several sons, and when these half-brothers grew up, they chased Jephthah off the land. "You will not get any of our father's inheritance," they said, "for you are the son of a prostitute." Remember, we read about Jephthah yesterday in the Legends of the Jews. We read a little bit more about the story about his daughter. Okay. "You will not get any of our father's inheritance," they said, "for you are the son of a prostitute." So Jephthah fled from his brothers and lived in the land of Tob. Soon he had a band of worthless rebels following him. At about this time, the Ammonites began their war against Israel. When the Ammonites attacked, the elders of Gilead sent for Jephthah in the land of Tob. The elders said, "Come, be our commander. Help us fight the Ammonites." But Jephthah said to them, "Aren't you the ones who hated me and drove me from my father's house? Why do you now come to me when you're in trouble?" "Because we need you," the elders replied. "If you lead us in battle against the Ammonites, we will make you ruler over all the people in Gilead." Jephthah said to the elders, "Let me get this straight. If I come with you, and if Yahuwah gives me victory over the Ammonites, you will really make me the ruler of all people." "Yahuwah is our witness," the elders replied. We promise to do whatever you say. So Jephthah went with the elders to Gilead, and the people made him their ruler and commander of the army. At Mizpah, in the presence of Yahuwah, Jephthah repeated what he had said to the elders. Then Jephthah sent messengers to the king of Ammon, asking, "Why have you come out to fight against my land?" The king of Ammon answered Jephthah's messengers, "When the Israelites came out of Egypt, they stole my land from the Arnon River to the Jabbok River and all the way to the Jordan. Now then, give back the land peaceably." Jephthah sent this message back to the Ammonite king. This is what Jephthah says: Israel did not steal any land from Moab or Ammon. When the people of Israel arrived at Kadesh on their journey from Egypt after crossing the Red Sea, they sent messengers to the king of Edom asking for permission to pass through his land, but their request was denied. Then they asked the king of Moab for a similar permission, but he wouldn't let them pass through either. So the people of Israel strayed in Kadesh. Finally, they went around Edom and Moab through the wilderness. They traveled along Moab's eastern border and camped on the other side of the Arnon River, but they never once crossed the Arnon River into Moab, for Arnon was the border of Moab. Then Israel sent messengers to King Sihon of the Amorites, who ruled from Heshbon, asking for permission to cross through his land to get to their destination. But King Sihon didn't trust Israel to pass through his land. Instead, he mobilized his army at Jahaz and attacked them. But Yahuwah, the God of Israel, gave his people victory over King Sihon, so Israel took control of all the land of the Amorites who lived in that region, from the Arnon River to the Jabbok River, and from the eastern wilderness to the Jordan. So you see, it was Yahuwah, the God of Israel, who took away the land from the Amorites and gave it to Israel. Why then should we give it back to you? You keep whatever your God Chemosh gives you, and we will keep whatever Yahuwah our God gives us. Are you any better than Balak, the son of Zippor, king of Moab? Did he try to make a cease against Israel for disputed land? Did he go to war against them? Israel has been living here for 300 years, inhabiting Heshbon and its surrounding settlements, all the way to Aor and its settlements, and in all the towns along the Arnon River. Why have you made no effort to recover it before now? Therefore, I have not sinned against you. Rather, you have wronged me by attacking me. Let Yahuwah, who is judge, decide today which of us is right, Israel or Ammon. But the king of Ammon paid no attention to Jephthah's message. At the time, the spirit of Yahuwah came upon Jephthah, and he went throughout the land of Gilead and Manasseh, including Mizpah and Gilead, and from there he led an army against the Ammonites. And Jephthah made a vow to Yahuwah. He said, "If you give me victory over the Ammonites, I will give Yahuwah whatever comes out of my house to meet me when I return in triumph. I will sacrifice it as a burnt offering." So Jephthah led his army against the Ammonites, and Yahuwah gave him victory. He crushed the Ammonites, devastating about 20 towns from Aor to an area near Minnith and as far away as Abel Kerimim. In this way, Israel defeated the Ammonites. When Jephthah returned home to Mizpah, his daughter came out to meet him, playing on a tambourine and dancing for joy. She was his only child. He had no other sons or daughters. When he saw her, he tore his clothes in anguish. "Oh, my daughter," he cried out, "you have completely destroyed me. You brought disaster on me, for I have made a vow to Yahuwah, and I cannot take it back." And she said, "Father, if you have made a vow to Yahuwah, you must do to me what you have vowed, for Yahuwah has given you a great victory over your enemies, the Ammonites. But first, let me do this one thing. Let me go up and roam in the hills and weep with my friends for 2 months, because I will die a virgin." "You may go," Jephthah said, and he sent her away for 2 months, and she and her friends went into the hills and wept because she would never have children. When she returned home, her father kept the vow he had made, and she died a virgin. So it has become a custom in Israel for young Israelite women to go away for 4 days each year to lament the fate of Jephthah's daughter. All right, y'all. Joy risings, joy risings. Look, now let me tell you. Before I understood this or had all the information to this, I had a conversation with somebody about Jephthah's daughter, and I didn't think that she had actually died, right? And this was it's about 3 years ago now, right? So first of all, Yahuwah does not allow human sacrifice. He absolutely does not, right? So I was like, no. I said, remember, I said, think about the firstborn. I said, when it's human, although they are sacrificed to Yahuwah, they aren't sacrificed. They are dedicated and set apart to them. I said, you don't kill them. They're like in his service until the day they die, just like Samuel, right? I said, that's a good example. I said, that's what happened to Jephthah's daughter, right? And I just knew I was so right. And, so I was like, ooh, I got to apologize. I was wrong on this one. Once I had more information and went into detail, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Sis really did die. Like, and she ain't want to die for real. I'm like, oh my goodness. Here, Tootie. Why you hand this to me? I thought you wanted me to open it. You hand it to me for me to eat. Ice cream first thing in the morning. Put the other one back. Eat this one since I started opening it here. Put that one back. You eat that one.
No. I said it's yours.
Okay. But I can't eat it right now, Tootie. I appreciate it. You think about me. First thing in the morning. Clearly, Tootie baby is up now. She come right to the deep freezer and get ice cream. I thought she was handing this to me for me to eat. I mean, not for me to eat. Handing it to me for me to open for her to eat. But she handed it to me, so I started opening it. But anyway. All right, y'all. So as we read yesterday, apparently she really died. It doesn't tell us. It just says she died. It didn't tell us how she died or whatever, or how he offered her up as a sacrifice. But we know she didn't want to go. And the only thing that we have in here, it says, first, let me do this one thing. Let me go roam and weep with my friends for a couple months because I'm a die virgin. And I never have children. But we know from the Legends of the Jews, the deeper story, where it tells us that she was going to all the sages and scholars, and that was the point she brought up. She said human sacrifice is forbidden, but Yahuwah calls all the sages and all the great teachers to forget that portion of the law, right? And they simply said, okay, well, whatever vow your father has made to Yahuwah, that he has to keep. And she was just like, wait, what? No, this is wrong. But it also said that Yahuwah said, he said, how did you know what would meet you when you came out of your house? So Yahuwah was teaching Jephthah a lesson, not in the fact that he had to kill his daughter type of lesson, but he was teaching him a principle. He said, you don't control any of this, pretty much kind of sum it up. So how can you promise me something you don't know or you have no control over? And clearly when he came back to the house, he not once thought about his daughter. Not once when he took that vow did he think about his daughter, that his daughter would be the one that would first meet him when he comes, right? All right. Last chapter for the day, y'all. Judges chapter 12. Then the people of Ephraim mobilized an army and crossed over the Jordan River to Zaphon. They sent his message to Jephthah. Why didn't you call for us to help you fight against the Amorites? We're going to burn down your house with you in it. Jephthah replied, I summoned you at the beginning of the dispute, but you refused to come. You failed to help us in our struggle against Ammon. So when I realized you weren't coming, I risked my life and went to battle with you. And Yahuwah gave me victory over the Ammonites. So why have you now come to fight me? The people of Ephraim responded, you men of Galilee are nothing more than fugitives from Ephraim and Manasseh. So Jephthah gathered all the men of Gilead and attacked the men of Ephraim and defeated them. Jephthah captured the shallow crossing of the Jordan River, and whenever a fugitive from Ephraim tried to go back across, the men of Gilead would challenge him. Are you a member of the tribe of Ephraim? They would ask. If the man said, no, I'm not, they would tell him to say Shibboleth. If he was from Ephraim, he would say Sibboleth, because people from Ephraim cannot pronounce the word correctly. Then they would take him and kill him at the shallow crossing of the Jordan. In all, 42,000 Ephraimites were killed at that time. Jephthah judged Israel for 6 years. When he died, he was buried in one of the towns of Gilead. After Jephthah died, Isban from Bethlehem judged Israel. He had 30 sons and 30 daughters. He sent his daughters to marry men outside his clan, and he brought in 30 young women from outside his clan to marry his sons. Isban judged Israel for 7 years. When he died, he was buried at Bethlehem. After Isban died, Eli from the tribe of Zebulun judged Israel for 10 years. When he died, he was buried at Ajalon and Zebulun. After Elon died, Abdon, son of Hillel from Pirathon, judged Israel. He had 40 sons and 30 grandsons who rode on 70 donkeys. He judged Israel for 8 years. When he died, he was buried at Pithon in Ephraim in the hill country of the Amalekites. All right, beautiful people. So that was Judges 10, 11, and 12. Let's go ahead and hop on over here to the list of the Jews. And I just realized I got to fix my page number on the video yesterday. The ending page. So we're starting on page 404, and we're starting in chapter 3 with Samuel, right? So we're about to read about how Samuel came on the scene, and it's going to start with Elkanah and Hannah. So we're in chapter 3, volume 4. If you have my book, page 404. And if you have the smaller book, the page number is off. It's not 404, and it's the subtitle Elkanah and Hannah, which is the first page of chapter 3. All right, so everybody that's now coming in, I apologize earlier for being extremely late. I forgot it was daylight savings time. Didn't hear my clock go off. My eyes opened an hour later, right? And normally my kids would wake up, but everybody in the whole house overslept. Bella's the only one woke down, right? Husband, everybody still asleep, right? Okay, so just in case you didn't know, you ain't heard earlier when I came on. All right, y'all, here we go. The period of the judges is linked to the period of the kingdom by the prophet Samuel, who anointed both Saul and David as kings. Not only was Samuel himself a prophet, but his forebearers also had been prophets, and both his parents, Elkanah and Hannah, were endowed with the gift of prophecy. Aside from this gift, Elkanah possessed extraordinary virtue. He was a second Abraham, the only pious man of his generation who saved the world from destruction when Yahuwah, made wroth by the idolatry of Micah, was on the point of annihilating it utterly. His chief merit was that he stimulated the people by his example to go on pilgrimages to Shiloh, the spiritual center of the nation. Accompanied by his whole household, including kinsmen, he was in the habit of making the 3 prescribed pilgrimages annually. And though he was a man of only moderate means, his retinue was equipped with great magnificence. In all the towns through which it passed, the procession caused commotion. The lookers on invariably inquired to the reason of the rare spectacle, and Elkanah told them, "We're going to the house of Yahuwah at Shiloh, for thence come forth the law. Why should you not join us?" Such gentle, persuasive words did not fail in taking effect. In the first year, 5 households undertook the pilgrimage, the next year 10, and so on until the whole town followed his example. Elkanah chose a new route every year. Thus he touched many towns, and their inhabitants were led to do a pious deed. In spite of his God-fearing ways, Elkanah's domestic life was not perfectly happy. He had been married 10 years, and his union with Hannah had not been blessed with offspring. The love he bore his wife compensated him for his childlessness, but Hannah herself insisted upon his taking a second wife. See, it's the women that be getting the man in trouble a lot of times, right? Look, same thing, Sarah, Abraham. Look, Elkanah was completely happy. He said, "Baby, your love is enough." She's like, "Look, I need to give you children. Maybe you need to get a second wife," right? Like, and here's the thing: you get a second wife, not to love her, but just use her for the child making part. That's it. Like, come on, we can't all the time have one without the other, right? It's almost, I ain't gonna say it's impossible, but Look, Tiffany, hey girl, hey. He had been married 10 years, and his union with Hannah had not been blessed with offspring. The love he bore his wife compensated him for his childlessness, but Hannah herself insisted upon his taking a second wife. Peninnah embraced every opportunity of vexing Hannah. In the morning, her derisive greeting to Hannah would be, "Dost thou not mean to rise and wash thy children and send them to school?" Such jeers were to keep Hannah mindful of her childlessness. Like Hagar did the same thing to Sarah. Like we would have been fighting up in there. And I'd have been more pissed at myself because I started all this rigmarole in the household. Like I should have been just content with your love and your love alone, right? All the shenanigans, right? Let me just read that again. In the morning, her derisive greeting to Hannah would be, "Dost thou not mean to rise and wash thy children and send them to school?" Such jeers were to keep Hannah mindful of her childlessness. Perhaps Peninnah's intentions were laudable. She may have wanted to bring Hannah to the point of praying to Yahuwah for children. However, it may have been forced from her. Hannah's petition for a son was fervent and devout. She entreats Yahuwah, Lord of the world, thou created aught in vain? Our eyes thou hast destined for sight, our ears for hearing, our mouth for speech, our nose to smell therewith, our hands for work. Did thou not create these beasts above my heart to give suck to a babe? Oh, Lord, I said beast. It's breast. Look, didst thou not create these breasts above my heart to give suck to a babe? Oh, grant me a son that he may draw nourishment therefrom. Lord, thou reignest over all beings, the mortal and the heavenly beings. The heavenly beings neither eat nor drink. They do not. Sorry, the dishwasher's loud, y'all. Sorry, that's what she was opening and closing. The heavenly beings neither eat nor drink. They do not propagate themselves, nor do they die, but they live forever. Mortal man eats, drinks, propagates his kind, and dies. If now I am of the heavenly beings, let me live forever. But if I too belong to mortal mankind, let me do my part in establishing the race. Eli, the high priest, who at first misinterpreted Hannah's long prayer, dismissed her with a blessing. May the son to be born unto thee acquire great knowledge in the law. Hannah left the sanctuary, and at once her grief-furrowed countenance changed. She felt beyond a doubt that the blessing of Eli would be fulfilled. Hannah's prayer was heard. At the end of 6 months, at the end of 6 months and a few days, Samuel was born to her. In the 19th year of her married life, and the 130th year of her age, Samuel was of a frail constitution and required tender care and nurture. For this reason, he and his mother could not accompany Elkanah on his pilgrimages. Hannah withheld her boy from the sanctuary for some years. Before Samuel's birth, a voice from heaven had proclaimed that in a short time a great man would be born whose name would be Samuel. All men children of that time accordingly were accordingly named Samuel. As they grew up, the mothers were in the habit of getting together and telling of their children's doing in order to determine which of them satisfied the expectation the prophecy had aroused. When the true Samuel was born, and by his wonderful deed excelled all his companions, it became plain to whom the word of Yahuwah applied. His preeminence now being undisputed, Hannah was willing to part with him. The following incident is an illustration of Samuel's unusual qualities manifested even in infancy. He was 2 years old when his mother brought him to Shiloh to leave him there permanently. An occasion at once presented itself for the display of his learning and acumen, which were so great as to arouse the astonishment of the high priest Eli himself. On entering the sanctuary, Samuel noticed that they were seeking a priest to kill the sacrificial animal. Samuel instructed the attendants that a non-priest was permitted to kill the sacrifice. The high priest Eli appeared at the moment when, by Samuel's direction, the sacrifice was being killed by a non-priest. Angered by the child's boldness, he was about to have him executed, regardless of Hannah's prayer for his life. Let him die, he said. I shall pray for another in his place. Hannah replied, I lent him to the Lord. Whatever betide, he belongs neither to thee or me, but only to Yahuwah. Only then, after Samuel's life was secured, Hannah offered up her prayer of thanksgiving. Besides the expression of her gratitude, it contains also many prophecies regarding Samuel's future achievements, and it recited the history of Israel from the beginning of the Advent. And it recited the history of Israel from the beginning until the advent of Messiah. Her prayer incidentally brought relief to the sons of Korah. Since the earth had swallowed them, they had been constantly sinking lower and lower. When Hannah uttered the words, Yahuwah bringeth down to Sheol and bringeth up, they came to a standstill in their downward course. Hannah was spared to witness not only the greatness of her son, but also the undoing of her rival. Every time Hannah bore a child, Peninnah lost 2 of hers until 8 of her 10 children had died, and she would have to surrender all had not Hannah interceded for her with prayer. Woo! I bet she regretted every time she opened her mouth against Hannah not having children, right? Ooh, let me read that again. Hannah was spared to witness not only the greatness of her son, but also the undoing of her rival. Every time Hannah bore a child, Peninnah lost 2 of hers until 8 of her children had died. She would have had to surrender all had Hannah not interceded for her with prayer. So we know that she lost 2 for everyone Hannah bore. Hannah had at least 4 children, right? So if she lost 8 and she had 10, 2 for every one she had. Okay. Eli and his sons. Shortly before Samuel entered upon his novitiate in the sanctuary, Eli succeeded to the 3 highest offices in the land. He was made high priest, president of the Sanhedrin, and ruler over the political affairs of Israel. Okay. Eli was a pious man and devoted to the study of the Torah, wherefore he attained a good old age and to high honors. In his office as high priest, he was successor to no less a person than Phinehas, who had lost his high priestly dignity on account of his haughty bearing toward Jephthah. With Eli, the line of Ithamar rose to power instead of the line of Eleazar. However, the iniquitous deeds of his 2 sons brought dire misfortune upon Eli and upon his family, though the scriptural account of their conduct may not be taken literally. The sons of Eli transgressed only in that sometimes kept the women waiting who came to the sanctuary to bring the purification offerings, so that they retarded their return to their families. This was bad enough for a priest of Yahuwah. Their misdeeds recoiled upon their father, who was not strict enough in rebuking them. Eli's punishment was that he aged prematurely, and besides, he had to give up his various offices. During his lifetime, his youngest son, Phinehas, the worthier of the 2, officiated as high priest. The only reproach which Phinehas laid upon himself open was that he made no attempt to mend his brother's ways. The worst of Yahuwah's decree against Eli, The worst of Yahuwah's decree against Eli, he learned from Elkanah, the man of God who came unto Eli, who announced that the high priestly dignity would be wrested from his house and once more conferred upon the family of Eleazar. And furthermore, his descendants will all die in their prime. The latter doom can be averted by good deeds, devotion and prayer, and zealous study of the Torah. These means were often employed successfully, but against the loss of the high priest office, there is no specific. The house of Eli forfeited it irrevocably. Abiathar, the great grandson of Eli's son Phinehas, the last of the high priests of the line of Ithamar, had to submit to the fate of seeing David transfer his dignity to Zadok, in whose family it remained forever. The sons of Eli brought misfortune also upon the whole land of Israel. To their sins and the ease with which the people condoned them was attributed to the unhappy issue of war with the Philistines. The holy ark, the receptacle for the broken table of the law, which accompanied the people to the camp, did not have the expected effect of compelling victory for the Israelites. What Eli feared happened. He enjoined upon his sons not to appear before him if they should survive the capture of the ark. But they did not survive it. They died upon the battlefield on which their nation had suffered a bitter defeat. The Philistines, to be sure, had to pay dearly for their victory, especially those who had spoken contemptuous words when the holy ark had appeared in the Israelites' camp. The God of the Israelites had 10 plagues, and those he expended upon the Egyptians. He no longer has it in his power to do harm. But Yahuwah said, do ye but wait to see. I shall bring plagues down upon you, like of which have never been seen. This new plague consisted of mice crawling forth out of the earth and jerking the entrails out of oh my gosh, that's gross. This new plague consisted of mice crawling forth out of the earth and jerking the entrails out of the bodies of the Philistines while they eased nature, while they was using the bathroom. Oh. If the Philistines sought to protect themselves by using brass vessels, the vessels burst forth at the touch of the mice, and as before, the Philistines were at their mercy. After some months of suffering, when they realized that their god Dagon was the victim instead of the victor, they resolved to send the ark back to the Israelites. Many of the Philistines, however, were not yet convinced of Yahuwah's power. The experiment with a milk kind on which there had come no yoke was to establish the matter for them. The result was conclusive. Scarcely had the cows begun to draw the cart containing the ark when they raised their voices in song. Arise, thou, O Acacia, soar aloft in the fullness of thy splendor, thou who art adorned with gold embroidery. Thou who art reverenced within the holiest of the palace, thou who art covered by the two cherubim. When the holy ark was thus brought into the Israelitish domain, there was exceeding great rejoicing. Yet the people were lacking in due reverence. They unloaded the holy vessel while doing their usual work. Yahuwah punished them severely. The 70 members of the Sanhedrin perished, and with them 50,000 of the people. The punishment was meet for another reason. At first sight of the ark, some of the people had exclaimed, who vexed these that thou did feel offended, and what have mollified thee now? The activities of Samuel. In the midst of the defeats and other calamities that overwhelmed the Israelites, Samuel's authority grew and the respect for him increased until he was acknowledged the helper of his people. His first efforts were directed toward counteracting the spiritual decay in Israel. When he assembled the people at Mizpah for prayer, he sought to distinguish between the faithful and the idolatrous in order to mete out punishment to the disloyal. He had all the people drink water whose effect was to prevent idolaters from opening their lips. The majority of the people repented of their sins, and Samuel turned to Yahuwah in their behalf. Lord of the world, thou requirest not of man, but that he should repent of his sins. Israel is penitent, do thou pardon him. The prayer was granted, and when, after his sacrifice, Samuel led an attack upon the Philistines, victory was not withheld from the Israelites. Yahuwah terrified the enemy. Yahuwah terrified the enemy first by an earthquake, and then by thunder and lightning. Many were scattered and wandered about aimlessly. Many were precipitated into the rents torn into the earth. The rest had their faces scorched, and in their terror and pain, their weapons dropped from their hand. In peace, as in war, Samuel was the type of a disinterested, incorruptible judge who even refused compensation for the time, trouble, and pecuniary sacrifices entailed upon him by his office. His sons fell far short of resembling their father in these respects. Instead of continuing Samuel's plan of journeying from place to dispense judgment, they had the people come to them, and they surrounded themselves with a crew of officials who preyed upon the people for their maintenance. Seemed like we still keep that same setup that his sons did, right? In a sense, therefore, the curse with which Eli threatened Samuel in his youth was accomplished. Both he and Samuel had sons unworthy of their fathers. Samuel, at least, had the satisfaction of seeing his sons mend their ways. One of them is the prophet Joel, whose prophecy forms a book of the Bible. Though, according to this account, the sons of Samuel were by no means so iniquitous as might be inferred from the severe expressions of the scripture, still the demand for a king made by the leaders of the people was not unwarranted. All they desired was a king in the place of a judge. What enkindled the wrath of Yahuwah and caused Samuel's vexation was the way in which the common people formulated the demand. We want a king, they said, that we may be like the other nations. The Reign of Saul. There were several reasons for the choice of Saul as king. He had distinguished himself as a military hero in the unfortunate engagement of the Philistines with Israel under the leadership of the sons of Eli. Goliath captured the tables of the law. When Saul heard of this in Shiloh, he marched 60 miles to the camp, wrested the tables from the giant, and returned to Shiloh on the same day, bringing Eli the report of the Israelitish misfortune. Besides, Samuel possessed unusual beauty, which explains why the maidens whom he asked about the seer in the city sought to engage him in lengthy conversation. At the same time, he was exceedingly modest. When he and his servants failed to find the asses they were looking for, he said, "My father would take thought of this," putting his servants on a level with himself. And when he was anointed king, he refused to accept the royal dignity until the Urim and the Thummim were consulted. His chief virtue, however, was his innocence. He was free from sin as a 1-year-old child. No wonder then he was held worthy of the prophetic gift. The prophecies he uttered concerned themselves with the war of Gog and Magog, the meting out of the reward and punishment at the last judgment. Finally, his choice as king was due also to the merits of his ancestors, especially his grandfather Abiel, a man interested in the public welfare, who would have the streets lighted so that the people might go to the houses of study after dark. Saul's first act as king was his successful attack upon Nahash, the king of the Amorites, who had ordained the Gileadites, to remove the injunction from the Torah, barring the Ammonites from the congregation of Israel. In his next undertaking, the campaign against the Philistines, he displayed his piety. His son, Jonathan, had fallen under the severe ban pronounced by Saul against all who had tasted food on a certain day, and Saul did not hesitate to deliver him up to death. Jonathan's trespass was made known by the stones in the breastplate of the high priest. All the stones were bright Only the one bearing the name Benjamin had lost its brilliancy. By lot, it was determined that its dim luster was due to the Benjamite Jonathan. Saul desisted from his purpose of executing Jonathan only when it appeared that he had transgressed his father's command by mistake. A burnt offering and his weight in gold paid to the sanctuary were considered an atonement for him. In the same war, Saul had occasion to show his zeal for the scrupulous observance of the sacrificial ordinances. He reproached his warriors with eating the meat of the sacrifices before the blood was sprinkled on the altar, and he made it his task to see to it that the slaughtering knife was kept in the prescribed condition. As a recompense, an angel brought him a sword, there being none besides Saul in the whole army to bear one. Saul manifested a different spirit in the next campaign, the war with the war with the Amalekites, whom, at the bidding of Yahuwah, he was to exterminate. When the message of Yahuwah's displeasure was conveyed to Saul by the prophet Samuel, he said, "If the Torah ordains that a heifer of the herd shall be beheaded in the valley as an atonement for the death of a single man, how great must the atonement required for the slaughter of so many men? And granted they are sinners, what wrong have their cattle done to deserve annihilation? And granted that the adults are worthy of their fate, what have the children done?" Then a voice proclaimed from heaven, "Be not overjust." Later on, when Saul commissioned Doeg to cut down the priests at Nob, the same voice was heard to say, "Be not over wicked." It was this very Doeg, destined to play so baleful a part in his life, who induced Saul to spare Agag, the king of the Amalekites. His argument was that the law prohibits the slaying of an animal and its young on the same day. How much less permissible is it to destroy at one time old and young, men and children? As Saul had undertaken the war of extermination against Amalek only because forced into it, he was easily persuaded to let the people keep part of the cattle of life. He was easily persuaded to let the people keep a part of the cattle alive. As far as he himself was concerned, he could have no personal interest in the booty, but he was so affluent that he took a census of the army by giving a sheep to every one of his soldiers, distributing not less than 200,000 sheep. Compared with David's sins, Saul's were not sufficiently grievous to account for the withdrawal of the royal dignity from him and his family. The real reason was Saul's too great mildness, a drawback in a ruler. Moreover, his family was of such immaculate nobility that his descendants might have become too haughty. When Saul disregarded the divine command about the Amalekites, Samuel announced to him that his office would be bestowed upon another. The name of his successor was not mentioned on that occasion, but Samuel gave him a sign by which to recognize the future king. He would cut off the corner of Saul's mantle. He who would cut off the corner of Saul's mantle would reign in his stead. Later on, when David met Saul in the cave, he cut off a piece of the king's skirt. Saul knew him for a certainty to be his destined successor. So Saul lost his crown on the account of Agag and did not accomplish his purpose for saving the life of the Amalekite king, for Samuel inflicted a most cruel death upon Agag, and that not in accordance with Hebrew, but with the heathen forms of justice. No witnesses of Agag's crime could be summoned before the court, nor could it be proved that Agag, as the law requires, had been warned when about to commit the crime. Though punishment due was meted out to Agag, in a sense, it came too late. Had he been killed by Saul in the course of battle, the Hebrews would have been spared the persecution devised by Haman. So he had enough time to go on and get him some before Samuel actually killed him, which i.e. created down the line The wicked
I see
king.
You see me?
Yes, I see you too. You got chocolate all around your mouth. The wicked Haman, right? And so we know all the shenanigans that went on, why Queen Esther had to be raised up, right? Let me read this again. Though due punishment was meted out to Agag, in a sense, it came too late. Had he been killed by Saul in the course of the battle, the Hebrews would have been spared the persecution devised by Haman. For in the short span of time that elapsed between war and his execution, Agag became the ancestor of Haman. The Amalekite War was the last of Saul's notable achievements. Shortly afterward, he was seized by the evil spirit, and the rest of his days were passed mainly in persecuting David and his followers. Saul would have died immediately after the Amalekite War if Samuel had not interceded for him. The prophet prayed to Yahuwah that the life of the disobedient king be spared, at least so long as his own years had not come to their destined close. Thou regardest me equal to Moses and Aaron. As Moses and Aaron did not have their handiwork destroyed before their eyes during their lifetime, so may my handiwork not cease during my life. Yahuwah said, what shall I do? Samuel will not let me put an end.
What should we do?
Samuel would not let me put an end to Saul's days, and if I let Samuel die in his prime, people will speak ill of him. Meanwhile, David's time is approaching, and one reign may not overlap the time assigned to another by his hairbreadth. Yahuwah determined to let Samuel age suddenly, and when he died at 52, the people were under the impression the days of an old man had come to an end. So long as he lived, Saul was secure. Scarcely was he dead when the Philistines began to menace the Israelites and their king. Soon it appeared how well justified had been the mourning services for the departed prophet in the Israelitish towns. It was not remarkable that the mourning for Samuel should have been universal. During his active administration as judge, he had been in the habit of journeying throughout every part of the country, so he was known personally to all the people. This practice of his testifies not only to the zeal with which he devoted himself to his office, but also to his wealth. For the expenses entailed by these journeys were defrayed from his own purse. Only one person in all the land took no part in the demonstrations of grief. Hold on. Look, so all this traveling and all this stuff he was doing to go see the people and talk to the people, render judgment, it said he paid for it himself, doing the exact opposite. People paying for prophets and preachers to come in. Don't get me started on that because we already know that's wrong, right? We already know that's wrong. And they make a living from it, right? Let you not give them what they need to come in to preach at your little church. I ain't coming. You better get somebody else for that. I do not waste my prophecies on the likes of such people who can't even pay for me to arrive, right? I'm like, y'all better get out of here with this. And your name would have been stricken from the heavenly tablet if I was in charge at that moment. Get out of here. Matter of fact, we can cause your whole office to close up. Get on out of here. Go get your regular job, G. All right, look. Soon it appeared how well justified had been the mourning services for the departed prophet in all the Israelitish towns. It was not remarkable that the mourning for Samuel should have been universal. During his active administration as judge, he had been in the habit of journeying through every part of the country, and so he was known personally to all the people. This practice of his testifies not only to the zeal with which he devoted himself to his office, but also to his wealth, for the expenses entailed by these journeys were defrayed from his own purse. Only one person in all the land took no part in the demonstrations of grief. During the very week of mourning, Nabal held feasts. What? Yahuwah exclaimed. All weep and lament over the death of the pious, and this reprobate engages in revelry. Punishment was not withheld. 3 days after the week of mourning for Samuel, Nabal dies. We know how Nabal died, right? Okay, but we'll get to it. There was none that felt the death of Samuel more keenly than Saul. Left alone and isolated, he did not shrink from extreme measures to enter into communication with the departed prophet. With his 2 adjutants, Abner and Amasa, he betook himself to Abner's mother, the Witch of En-Dor. The king did not reveal his identity, but the witch had no difficulty in recognizing her visitor. In necromancy, the particular rule holds good that unless it is summoned by a king, a spirit raised from the dead appears head downward and feet in the air. Hold on, let me read that again. The king did not reveal his identity, but the witch had no difficulty in recognizing her visitor. In necromancy, the peculiar rule holds good that unless it is summoned by a king, a spirit raised from the dead appears head downward and feet in the air. I've seen it on a couple movies, right? Okay, look. So you know, if you go and get a crystal ball reading, which you are not to do, is stay away from all forms of necromancy at all times, right? The Witch of En-Dor, what she was doing, absolutely not. Yahuwah said, you don't go to them for information. I am your mighty one, right? Tiffany. Oh, wait, I know what your, hold on. You don't go to other people for information. You should be coming to me to get, right? You come right to me for that information. So when people went to get their reading, and if they ask the witch or whoever to bring up somebody from the dead, like you hear people, I want to talk to my granddaddy. Can you bring my granddaddy back? And I'm like, listen, I always knew, even watching that in movies, right? And look, when I would ride through town and I see like the crystal ball reading places, I'm like, oh, them places are gonna catch fire one of these days. I knew even younger, you ain't supposed to fool around with them, right? And you got readings by Barbara over here on the corner on Washington. And I'm like, ooh, Barbara gonna get in trouble one of these days. And it's all, look, let me tell you something. And their houses always look fine when you ride by, but if you look a little close, they always got overgrown bushes and the yard look a mess. It's like, how you gonna get a reading from Barbara and her yard is a mess, my G? It's like I pay attention to stuff like that. And then when I seen the scripture, look, when I seen the scripture in Proverbs, it talks about people's homes, right? And their houses. They say you can ride past a house, and if their house looks unkempt or not taken care of from the outside, you can almost best believe that the inside looks exactly the same, right? And it's a reflection of what is going on the inside of the person as well. I've come to know that, I mean, unless you got like a bunch of kids, and even then, look, I'd be like, look here, y'all better get this together. So I'm constantly cleaning, right? Constantly going through, pick that up. No, you done playing with it, put it up. You better not throw that down. Get out there. Boy, get out here and rake these leaves. We would not look like that house on the block. My kids probably know that coming from me. Like, they can probably tell you that word for word. Oh, Mom, we don't want to look like that house on the block, right? So I'm like, get out there and get that up. Get out here, pick these weeds up. Weed whack this. Get them leaves raked up. And yeah, so, but I've come to find out that principle holds true almost all of the time, unless like the person is away and they couldn't afford somebody while they were gone to come keep it up, or unless they've gotten older and they aren't able to keep it up themselves. That tends to normally happen sometime, you know, but people, if they've been good at it, they'll normally stay out there. They'll do it as long as they physically can. And when they can't, if they can afford it, they will pay for others who have the strength to do it to come do it, you know. And a lot of times, if they don't have that, a lot of times you'll see family kind of pitching in to help or whatever. Or family, I think family should, right? Okay. So I said all that, kind of went into that a little bit, but what happens is when they go in and they have somebody call up granddaddy from the dead, or let me just speak to mama for a real quick second. I need to know where she left the will at, right? People like do stuff like that. We can't find the will. Look, we need to go to a witch. Look, bring up mama. Let us know where this will is at. Everybody tripping over here, right? They do stuff like that. And I'll be hard. I'm like, these people going to get themselves in trouble, right? Look. Okay, so when somebody goes to call up somebody from the dead, that when the dead person come, they come on the scene upside down, right? So when Samuel showed up and he was standing right side up, she was like, oh, it's Samuel. She knew, yes.
Heck up. Say that.
Okay, all y'all need to chill out. Okay.
Say heck up.
Saya, don't tell her to shut the heck up, okay? I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get all y'all. Watch your mouth. All right, Tootie. All right, so that's how the witch knew that this was King Saul, who was pretty much tricking her, right? Like he was a normal person. Let me go back and we'll read it. Oh, the comment about Tiffany. You said giving them hemorrhoids. You was talking about when the plague of the rats came, right? That's why I started laughing. I just now saw your comment. Look, yeah, that was gross. Look, there was none that felt the death of Samuel more keenly than Saul. Left alone and isolated, he did not shrink from extreme measures to enter into communication with the departed prophet. With his two adjutants, Abner and Amasa, he betook himself to Abner's mother, the Witch of En-Dor. The king did not reveal his identity, but the witch had no difficulty in recognizing her visitor. In necromancy, the peculiar rule holds good that, look, they know this. They know, look, people know they're doing what they shouldn't be doing, right? Because they know everything is flipped upside down and backwards. You have to know you're doing something wrong if all this stuff is showing up backwards and upside down for you, right? And so now you purposely going into doing stuff that you know is on the flip side of reality. And it's like, you have no conscience about that. Like, you can sleep good at night knowing that you are summoning the underworld, like, and you're making a living off of it. You must know that you're going to find your end there one day, right? I'm just like, and it just baffles me how somebody could in their right mind do this, right? Let me tell you something. People don't get right minds about money and fame and stuff. They end up doing stuff like this and they don't think straight. And Yahuwah gives them over to their ways until they themselves find themselves there upside down, being sought by a family member. Oh, my G, look. In necromancy, the peculiar rule holds good that unless it is summoned by a king, a spirit raised from the dead appears head downward and feet in the air. Accordingly, when the figure Samuel stood upright before them, the witch knew that the king was with her. Though the witch saw Samuel, she could not hear what he said, while Saul heard his words, but could not see his person. Another peculiar phenomenon in necromancy. The conjurer sees the spirit, for he whom the spirit had been raised only hears it. Another person present neither sees it nor hears it. Let me read that again. Though the witch saw Samuel, she could not hear what he said, while Saul heard his words but could not see his person. Another peculiar phenomenon in necromancy. The conjurer sees the spirit, and he for whom the spirit had been raised only hears it. Another person present neither sees nor hears it. So if y'all going to go see granddaddy and you're bringing your cousins and your sisters and brothers with you, the person that's calling up granddaddy, which we know really ain't granddaddy, they gonna see granddaddy rise up, right? And the person who's seeking granddaddy gonna hear granddaddy's voice. And all your cousins and your siblings, they ain't gonna see it, they ain't gonna hear nothing. They just gonna look at both y'all nuts while the conjurer eyes get big. And you, granddaddy, is that you? I hear you. Is that you? They sitting there, look, John done lost his goddamn mind. Let's get out of here. The witch and him is crazy. Like, first of all, none of y'all should have went with them. Y'all said, look, we're going to go see Granddaddy. I don't know what I would do if I seen one of my, look, I was sad to see family members go. But I bet not see you in my house. Let me tell you something. When I have dreams about members of my family that have passed, look, I'm so serious about this that even in my dreams, I am aware that I am not to talk to the dead, right? And let me tell you something. I dream about my grandmother a lot. It's funny, it's crazy. Like, because my grandma and my aunt, I dream about them a lot. But in my dreams, I look at them. I don't talk to them, but I just look at them like, I do just like that in my dreams to them. I'm like, and it's like, I don't open my mouth and talk to them, but it's like mentally I'm saying, why are you here? You are not supposed to be here, right? You know, so, but when I dream about them, I start thinking about and I start paying attention to happenings going on in my family, not just my immediate household, like my bigger family with aunts and uncles and cousins and stuff like that. So I start really paying attention. I'm like, okay, why is y'all showing up? Why is y'all showing up? Look, hold on. One time I had a dream, 3 of them showed up, right? 3 of them that had passed away. One that's been passed away for a very long time. One of my uncles, my grandma. No, it wasn't my grandma. My aunt, one of my uncles, my aunt. No, yeah, it was, now I know who they were coming for, right? It was one of my uncles and my aunt. And we were sitting in my dining room, and I come and walk downstairs, and I'm like, and I pause and just look at them. And I wasn't scared of anything, but I'm just looking at them, like, because I'm aware. Why is y'all showing up? Why are you here? Like, I wouldn't be mad. I wouldn't be scared. I'm just looking at them, and I'm asking this question in my head, like, why are you here? And they're just, and all the time they just look at me like it was. I didn't hear them talk except for this one time. And again, Bella, stop. Let it go. Stop it, Josiah. But this one. I'm sorry. Hold on 1 second. Let it go. I'm still recording. Stop it. Look. Okay. So, and I came down here and they gave me this look like somebody about to come with us. And I'm like, but it was like, it was my uncle. It was my uncle that said it. And it kind of even freaked me out in a dream, but I didn't like, hey, come on. I wasn't shaking in the dream, but I'm just like, well, it definitely ain't gonna be me. That's what I said. He said, we gotta come get somebody, you know. And I'm like, and I looked at him like, well, it definitely ain't gonna be me or nobody in my household. And I don't know who you're coming to get, you know. So I was like, and I don't know that I really want to know either. But the next person that went was my grandmother, right? So I'm just like, oh, these dreams. I don't look now, y'all. Look. So it's crazy sometimes, and some people like, girl, I be handy. And those dreams, I don't really share with any of my family members because I don't really know how to share it with them. So those I just kind of keep to myself, but I'll see it and I'll watch it progressing and I'll watch it coming, right? Because it's not really anything that I can do. It's going to happen inevitably, right? I mean, we could pray that their life is lengthened, but I come to find out a lot of times in some cases, especially if there is some health issue that causes their body to deteriorate and we didn't catch it in time enough where it could be reversed, that it tends to happen, right? You know, but from the time that, because I was here in this house, so I would say I had that dream about a year before. I'll say about a year before my grandmother actually passed. Yeah. Because I was here in this house. we were here. Yeah, it was a year before my grandmother had actually passed, right? So I'm just saying, look, I don't be asking for stuff like that. The things just kind of show up in my dreams, right? But I'm telling y'all, if y'all need to know, y'all want information about a family member, even if a family member's sick, you want to know if they get better, you better only go talk to y'all. Don't go talking to the witches of En-Dor, nobody, palm, whatever. Stay away from them, I'm telling you. You know, like I know, you stay away from it, right? Because you'll literally bring a curse upon your household by doing it. And if you've done it, you need to repent. Like, you really need to repent, right? You don't, because I didn't tell anybody, Disha. Did you just hear me say that? I didn't tell, I don't even share those dreams with you or mama. And especially because I knew it was about grandma, right? How could I tell y'all that, right? So, but yeah, so yeah, some of those, yeah, so okay, y'all. Let me go back. So I'll read this part again. Though the witch of En-Dor saw Samuel, she could not hear what he said, while Samuel heard his words, but could not see his person. Another peculiar phenomenon in necromancy. The conjurer sees the spirit, and he for whom the spirit had been raised only hears it. Another person present neither hears nor sees it. The witch's excitement grew, and when she perceived a number of spirits arise by the side of... The witch's excitement grew when she perceived a number of spirits arise by the side of Samuel, the dead prophet, when he was summoned back to earth, though at the judge thought that the judgment day had arrived. Look, it's a couple... Look, as we've been learning, when certain things happen, certain people think that the day of judgment has come, right? Even when the Torah was being given, the great earthquake, they was like, oh, judgment day is here. People on earth living thought it is the time of the judgment. Nope, Yahuwah is only giving his people the Torah. So when certain things kind of happen on the earth, people think, oh my gosh, the day of judgment is here. So people start freaking out, right? So this was happening, right? And because Samuel showed up, and a host of other people had showed up with him, they thought clearly it's judgment day. The dead have come back to life, right? So look, let me read it. The witch's excitement. Oh, was that the one that was half open? She handed it to me and I half opened it. So if you can, that. Yeah. Oh, that was like a few minutes ago. She handed it to me. No, she ate one. She gave one to me. I didn't see her with the other one in her hand. So I started opening it to hand it to her, and I saw she had one, so I closed it back up and put it back in. Oh yeah, ain't nothing wrong with it. Like, yeah, I literally just put it back in there. Hold on to them, almost done. Hold on. The witch's excitement grew when she perceived a number of spirits arise by the side of Samuel, the dead prophet, when he was summoned back to earth, thought that judgment day had arrived. He requested Moses accompany him and testified to his always having executed the ordinances of the Torah as Moses had established them. With these two great leaders, a number of the pious arose, like, Saul, my G, what did you do? You didn't call down all paradise. Look, hold on, look. With these two great leaders, a number of the pious arose, all believing that the day of judgment was at hand. Samuel was apparelled in the upper garment his mother made for him when she surrendered him to the sanctuary. This he had worn all throughout his life, and in it when he was buried. At the resurrection, all the dead wear their grave clothes. And so it came about that Samuel stood before Saul in his well-known upper garment. So make sure y'all burying y'all loved ones in something that they gonna like, right? Even if they gonna be stricken to damnation for all of eternity, at least they probably want to look good going. Look, and I say that because I think about my aunt. One of my aunts, she hasn't passed away. My aunt Tina. Look, let me tell you, she literally, is she here? I know she'll come in from time to time and she'll be quiet. She probably won't mind me sharing this. She literally shared with me before she went to Japan some years ago. She said, listen, if I should happen to kick the bucket while I'm over here, this is what I want to happen at my funeral. She gave me, like, I literally got it saved. I was like, Auntie, why you get? I like, you serious? You joking? She said, Pam, I'm serious. I said, okay, so I should be writing this down. She said, yes. So we literally stood here in my kitchen a few years ago, going through all the details of how she wanted her funeral. Look, is she here? I'm gonna tell her to come on. Look, and she said, look, first of all, she said, better nobody serve no chicken at my reception. I don't want no chicken, no fried chicken, no nothing. No fried chicken. Okay, Auntie, no fried chicken at your repast, right? Look, she said, make it more like an ice cream social. I was like, okay, because anybody know about Tina, she'll take kids for ice cream. She'll come all the way from North Carolina to Virginia to scoop up all the grandkids, put them in her car, and we would look. I ain't gonna say we'll look. I wouldn't say we'll ride illegally, but she'll pack as many kids in there with her as she can. My Aunt Tina, she loved kids. It's just the way she's been all her life, right? So all throughout the years, this has always been her thing. She loves children. She helped teach them and all that stuff. That's just her thing, right? She said, make it more like an ice cream social. I said, okay, Auntie. She said, look, she said, my favorite color is teal. She said, listen, I want to be buried in a teal dress. She said, I'm going to try and pick it out. I'll send it to you, the kind I want, you know. And so she said, if you can't find it, she said, well, you should be able to find it. Somebody have something, you know. She said, but look, she said, I don't care if the only one they got is a size 2. She said, and if I'm not a size 2, by the time I go, she said, you better get that dress. And she said, I don't care if you got to cut it down the back and lay it over the top of me. I want to be buried in that last teal dress. I was in here. It was funny while I was sitting here going through this, but she was so serious, right? She said, oh, my pumps. She said, I don't care if my whole body is covered up in the casket. She said, but my feet need to be showing. She said, and I'm hollering, like I literally got all these details written out, you know. And then she started going through her stuff about in her garage and all her holiday ornaments and stuff. She said, first, let my family go through all this stuff. And they don't want it. She said, anybody else is free game for anybody else, right? Look, so, but I said all that where it talks about those who are buried in their, whatever they're buried in, that's what they, tell us stop. That's what they're going to appear in on resurrection day, right? You know, so it just came to me. So when I go through this and I think about something funny, I like to share it with y'all, right? Okay, so I shared a little story because it's actually talking about this. Samuel was apparelled in the upper garment his mother had made for him when she surrendered him to the sanctuary. This he had worn throughout his life, and he was buried in it. At the resurrection, all the dead wear their grave clothes, and so it came about that Samuel stood before Saul in his well-known upper garment. Only fragments of the conversation between Samuel and Saul have been preserved in the scriptures. Samuel reproached Saul with having disturbed him. Was it not enough, he said, for thee to enkindle the wrath of thy creator by calling up the spirits of the dead? Must thou need change me also into an idol? For it is not said that like unto the worship, For is it not said that like unto the worshipers, so shall the worship, so shall the worship be punished? Samuel then consented to tell the king Yahuwah's decree that he had resolved to rend the kingdom out of his hand and invest David with the royal dignity. Whereupon Saul, these are not the words that thou spakest to me before. When we dwelt together, rejoined Samuel, I was in the world of lies. Now I abide in the world of truth, and thou hearest lying words from me, for I feared thy wrath and thy revenge. Now I abide in the world of truth, and thou hearest words of truth from me. As to the thing Yahuwah have done unto thee, thou hast deserved it, for thou did not obey the voice of Yahuwah, nor execute his fierce wrath upon Amalek. Saul asked, can I still save myself by flight? Yes, replied Samuel. If thou fleest, thou art safe. But if thou acceptest Yahuwah's judgment, by tomorrow thou wilt be united with me in paradise. When Abner and Amasa questioned Saul about his interview with Samuel, he replied, Samuel told me I should go into battle tomorrow and come forth victorious. More than that, my sons will be given exalted positions in return for their military prowess. The next day, his 3 sons went with him to war, and all were stricken down. Yahuwah summoned the angels and said to them, Behold, the being I have created in my world. A father, as a rule, refrains from taking his sons even to a banquet, lest he exposes them to the evil eye. Saul goes to war knowing that he will lose his life, yet he takes his sons with him and cheerfully accepts the punishment I ordained. So perished the first Hebrew king as a hero and a saint. His latter days were occupied with regrets on the account of the execution of the priest of Nob, and his remorse secured pardon for him. And his remorse secured pardon for him. Indeed, in all respects, his piety was so that not even David was his equal. David had many wives and concubines. Saul had but one wife. David remained behind, fearing to lose his life in battle with his son Absalom. Saul went into combat knowing he should not return alive. Mild and generous, Saul led the life of a saint in his own house, observing even the priestly laws of purity. Therefore Yahuwah reproached David with having pronounced a curse upon Saul in his prayer. Also, David in his old age was punished for having cut off the corner of Saul's mantle, for no amount of clothing would keep him warm. And we also read that part in the Bible. In was it Samuel or Kings? We read it in Samuel, right? Also, David in his old age was punished for having cut off the corner of Saul's mantle, for no amount of clothing would keep him warm. Finally, when a great famine fell upon the land during the reign of David, Yahuwah told him that it had been inflicted upon him because Saul's remains had not been buried with the honor due to him. And at that moment, a heavenly voice resounded, calling Saul the elect of Yahuwah. All right, y'all. So we're going to pause right here because this next section is a little bit long. Okay. The court of Saul will be the last part of this. So we're going to go ahead and end it here because, for one, like I said, we started late. I overslept. Forgive me, y'all. I forgot it was daylight savings time, and I didn't fix the clock on my nightstand. So I apologize. Okay, y'all. So that we started on page 404, and we ended on page 408. And we read Judges 10, 11, and 12. Y'all, it is Sunday. I didn't even give the date. It is Sunday, March the 14th, 2021, day 101 of year 3 of reading through the books of the law and the prophets, and of the 3-year consecutive day count, day 770. And remember, that is without the Sabbath days or feast day Sabbath days added in. And also, I was looking for the new moon last night, the sliver of it showing. It was so cloudy, I did not see anything. So shortly, because the sun is out now, I'm going to get out here and check and see if I see it in the sky. I'll be watching for a couple hours, and I'm going to check around, see if anybody else spotted it or if they spotted it all around the world. And if so, then we'll go ahead and call it, and I'll let y'all know for certain tomorrow. But if not, we're still going to be watching. So we should now, if it was, we should be able to see the moon in the sky with the sun, right? Okay. So we'll be watching for that. All right. So let's go ahead and do the blessing. Lisa, you talking about Tina? The dress, look, I didn't think about that. I'm gonna have to talk to her. We're gonna have to revisit this plan. She said we're gonna see her naked backside on Resurrection Day, so y'all might need to update that plan. Mama said, laugh out loud. Yep. I'm gonna make sure I talk to him about that. I didn't think about that. Good thinking, good things. So everybody take note of that. Y'all talking about splitting clothes and laying them on you. Just be mindful of your backside. Everybody gonna see it on Resurrection Day, right? Okay. That's funny, but you make a good point there. You make a good point. Okay. All right. So the blessing, y'all, is found in Numbers chapter 6, verses 22 through 27. And Yahuwah spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto Aaron and unto his sons, saying, On this wise ye shall bless the children of Israel, saying unto them, May Yahuwah bless us and keep us. May Yahuwah make his face to shine upon us and be gracious unto us. May Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon us and give us his peace. And they shall put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. All right, beautiful people. I don't think there was anything else. I don't see any other questions here today. All right, y'all. So I'll see y'all back here tomorrow morning, 7:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I will be on time in the morning. So we'll be here. Prep time, 7:10 a.m. You can come in at 7:10 if you want to. But if not, we live, 7:15. All right, y'all. Love y'all. Thanks for hanging out with me today while I stay on my post. I'll see y'all bright and early on tomorrow. You gotta wait.